Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I just want to say I appreciate you guys being here for just a couple minutes of your day. I appreciate you guys. So, it's pretty obvious of the title of this video. It is a book review of Oathbringer. A brick. A brick. A brick. So yes, I am reviewing the third book into the Stormlight Archive. I am slowly reading them all so I can be caught up to Winds of Truth in December. So all I have left is Rhythm of War, and that's going to be in like August. So this is going to be a really good time, and I'm going to be all caught up, and I can't wait. Actually looking forward to being caught up and seeing all the hype. Before I go into the spoilers part of just everything, I'm just going to give you an overall review of everything. First few points is, Dalinar is still needs to reunite everyone. Hasn't changed. That's about it. Shallan is still don't understand herself. Kaladin's still depressed. Just to sum up everything, then you have everyone else in the mix of it. With this one, you get to see Dalinar's backstory, which is actually pretty cool. I was so hyped because Dalinar actually is probably my favorite character of the story. I would say so. At first, I really liked Kaladin, but I felt like this book really made Kaladin take a step back, and he just didn't do nearly as much as he did in books 1 and 2. So that was kind of disappointing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about parts. So the main three characters, I'm going to talk about each one of them instead of just talking about the whole book, because that's just a lot. So I'm just going to do Dalinar, Shallan, Kaladin, and then I'm going to talk about some characters at the end, and then that's about it. This might be a part where I think a lot of people might not agree with, which is totally fine. We all have our own opinions on these, and I'm going to stick with it. Dalinar's flashbacks are not as good as I expected. I thought Kaladin's was really good, and I thought Shallan's were really good. So I actually expected Dalinar's to be as good, or honestly better. In this one, I felt like it was kind of weak. And what I mean by that is, honestly, there's just a lot of parts where I'm like, this did not have to be a full chapter. Like, there was a scene where a guy tried to kill Gavilar, and Dalinar killed him with a knife and then proceeded to use the knife to eat. And I'm like, this is so cringy. Like, he made, like, the point of what he was trying to do is just make Dalinar so heartless and just bloodthirsty that I felt like it was almost comical to be like how he was. Like, he's just like, hoo-hoo, look at me. You know, like, that's how I kind of felt when I was reading a lot of Dalinar's backstories, and it was just kind of cringy in some aspects where I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. Here we go again. Dalinar is bloodthirsty, and I'm just like, come on. But I will say, in some of the parts of the flashbacks were much needed, that we actually got to meet Dalinar's wife and know her name. So I thought Evie was actually a really cool indication of like introduction to this world. The way that she died was from Dalinar's hands, which I did like. I think that was a really cool idea of letting Dalinar being the one to actually kill his wife. And he was so heartbroken that he actually like made himself forget about her, the pain. And that's why he became like a drunk and everything too. I think those aspects were really good, but there's just parts of it when you first meet Dalinar. I feel like Brandon went a little too hard on the side of just Dalinar's just like a cold, heartless man, because I felt like he could have went about it. And that's the thing that I just did not get, is like, Brandon Sanderson is a great writer for characters, so I just expected Dalinar to be a little less edgy. But all in all, I thought it was fine. It wasn't like, I wasn't like, oh man. But I did like aspects that he wrote as for Dalinar in the past about being a father figure. I think those were really important key moments. And the way that Brandon Sanderson wrote Dalinar of just being a failure as a father, and just admitting to his sons of how much of a failure he felt as a father. Both the boys were just so shocked because they didn't expect this coming from their dad. I thought that was a beautiful way to write it, and I was really into those aspects of this book. Now, not all of it was perfect, but he had really good moments in it of reflecting Dalinar as like a father figure. The boys always never thought anything worse of Dalinar, and I thought that was a really cool aspect of it. I just thought that was a really cool thing to see. So in the present time, I think Dalinar getting married to Narvani was really cool. I was waiting for it to finally happen, and it did. And I was like, all right, finally, let's go. I think Narvani is low-key one of the better characters in this whole series. She doesn't have her own chapters, but she does such a good thing for Dalinar that I feel like when I read these kind of stories, I think that's the best way to make queens. Because usually, you know, the kings are the ones that have final say in everything. But I think what to make a really strong queen character is the way that she can support and just take over a room even when the king's not there. I think that's so good, and that's what he does really well at writing Nirvani through this. There's parts where Dalinar finally figures out like the truth of everything with his past, and he's a broken man about it, and he just can't believe it happened to him. And Nirvani has to take that up on her own, and I thought that was a really cool part of the story, is just Nirvani doing that. I had a really hard time pronouncing one of these characters' names, but I did enjoy the parts where Dalinar and Peregrine, I think that's how you pronounce his name. It's the man who one day can be really, really smart, or the next day he's just not very intelligent. He loses all of his intelligence. I like those conversations that Dalinar had with him. And I'm wondering what's going to happen with Peregrine. I think that's how you... I'm really bad at pronouncing names sometimes. I'm wondering what role he's going to in the future books. Now, if I remember, Brandon Sanderson's planning on doing like 10 of these. And I don't know, honestly, how I felt with Oathbringer. I don't know if I'm going to read all 10. Like I said, I'm going to do Win and Truth. And by then, I'm not going to remember anything, so I guess we'll see what happens. I'm actually looking forward to seeing this man's... what his plan is. Like, I just need to figure out what is going to happen on his side of things. I think it's just a really cool side character that we don't know enough about, and I think that's a really interesting thing to do. The last part I really liked with Dalinar is Dalinar and Odium's interactions. I think every single scene of those were really good. And Odium kind of reminds me of like Gandalf, except evil. Like, he's just like an evil Gandalf. And I think it was interesting that he lost his fight at the end of the book, which I did not expect. But I think there was a really cool way that he lost. So now I'm like, so his Rhythm of War, is he going to come back and have a revenge? Or maybe it's going to be book 5. Granted, I haven't read book 4 yet, so I have no idea. But I heard book 4 is like the weakest of the 4. I don't know how I feel about that yet, so I guess we'll see. Obviously, I'm going to review it and talk about it then. But I like the scenes with Odium and Dalinar. I think they're both really great scenes. I think it was just a fun time. With Dalinar's parts in this, out of 5, I'm probably going to give it a good solid 4 out of 5. I think that's a pretty good spot. So we're going to try and make this one shorter because Shallan, I'm still struggling with Shallan. I have a really hard time liking her, honestly. But every chapter she had Adolin in, I actually really liked them. They are a really cute couple, and the way that they interact with each other is really good. And I think Adolin is so needed for Shallan, because Shallan herself, she has so much self-doubt of everything, and she has to like mask who she really is because she doesn't believe in herself, which I think is a really cool aspect. That's why she has so many, like, I guess, multi-personalities essentially. But I like that Adolin told her, he's like, I love you for you. This is who you are. Like, all these great things that she needed to hear all of her life, and Adolin is doing that. I thought that was so good, and it was so needed for Shallan to get those like interactions. But when Adolin wasn't on screen, you got to deal with the Ghostbloods, and I just felt like the Ghostblood stuff was kind of boring. Now, is the Ghostbloods gonna be more important in the future books? I hope so. I think Brandon Sanderson's just sprinkling them in, which is perfectly fine. I just feel like every single time we would get there, she was like Vale. I'm like, oh gosh, here we go. Like an eye roll, like a huge eye roll, because I'm like, nothing's really gonna happen, and it doesn't really go anywhere yet. Do I think it's gonna go somewhere? Absolutely. I don't think Brandon Sanderson's gonna just lead us astray, kind of like what Robert Jordan does in the later Wheel of Time books. Especially with that stupid bull. I swear, if Brandon Sanderson does a bull thing, I'm done. With Shallan, though, in general, I just was not feeling it that much. And I just need to say this now. Thank God he didn't keep doing love triangles. I wrote, like, the first thing I did in my notes, I always write down notes with these longer books just so I can remember it. I instantly, I'm like, are we really going to do a love triangle? And we did. We ended up doing a love triangle for books 2 and most of book 3. I'm like, dear God, why are we doing a love triangle in this book? And it was making me so mad because honestly, Kaladin and Shallan just made no sense through this whole time. It was more, I always viewed it as like just a friend thing. And I just didn't like that there's like, ooh, could they be together? I'm like, why? And like there was parts with Kaladin where Kaladin was talking to Sprint. I can't think of his Sprint's name right off the top of my head right now. No idea why. I'm like spacing out. There's been times where Sprint was like, oh, come on, Kaladin, you should try and date her. And he's like, well, she's like engaged. And she's like, So, and I was like, oh my gosh, is this really going to lead to a thing like that where Kaladin and Shallan have a thing? And then there was parts where Shallan was like Vale, and Vale's like, ooh, I like Kaladin. I'm like, oh god, no, can we not do a love triangle? I'm like, that's for YA stuff, let's not do it in this. And that's how it was for most of this book until the very end, where Adolin told Shallan, she's like, you can be with Kaladin, he can fly. And Shallan just spews out everything that was so good about Adolin that she's like, but yeah, Kaladin does fly. And then her and Adolin end up being married at the end. So I was like, all right, this is fine. But oh man, I was going to get so mad if the book ends and there's still a love triangle between the three of them. Because I'm like, Shallan, you and Kaladin have nothing in common. Like, you kind of do, but you guys just don't get along that well. And I don't feel like a connection. I feel like it's more of like a brother-sister relationship. That's how I always felt with it. Another thing I really did like in this book, so, well, not what I really liked. So this is almost, it reminds me of The Way of Kings, where Brandon Sanderson did the saddle thing, and then you figure out that Alucard is the one that did it himself. In this one, they're trying to do the investigating who killed Sadeas, which I was like, yeah, who did? You know, I wonder, even though we all knew it was Adolin. So Adolin confessed to Shallan, and Shallan's like, oh, okay. And then Adolin tells Dalinar, and it seems like nobody cared. I'm like, what was the point of this? You guys wasted so much of this book where it felt like it went nowhere almost. Like, who cares? Granted, I feel like it's going to be more to it, but like, it just felt so bad because it just didn't go anywhere. And I was just, I don't know. I expected when Adolin revealed that he's the one that killed Sadeas, I actually thought it was going to be Sadeas' wife to do it. Like, she was going to be the one to figure it out, and then Adolin was going to die. She was going to kill Adolin, and then they were going to put it on saying, oh, it's the murderer who killed Sadeas. It's Sadeas. I don't know why I was saying Sadeas. He killed Sadeas' assassin, you know, stuff like that. That's what I was expecting, but who knows? Maybe it still will, even though now it's like we all know Adolin did it. So I will say Adolin has become a way cooler character. I will say that. Also, I liked how Adolin said he would do it again. I was like, me too, dude. Me too. So we're going to get into the last part, the last main character, and that's Kaladin. This is probably going to be the shortest part besides like the smaller characters, but Kaladin doesn't really do much. He hangs out with Parchman because he goes back home to see his parents. He hangs out with Parchman for like the first part of the book. Second part, he hangs with like wall guards, and then he learns on both sides of them, and then they end up killing each other, and Kaladin has to sit there and just like watch it all. I'm like, this is all Kaladin's doing, man. Like, it's just, I don't know. I feel like it's just pointless almost. And I hate saying it. I just felt like Kaladin's parts were kind of pointless. There is parts where you get Kaladin witness Moash killing Alucard, which was crazy. Alucard was just about to say the words to become, you know, a Radiant. And I was like, ooh, this is getting good. And Moash kills him before. I'm like, oh. And then Moash gives him like the Bridge 4 salute. And I'm like, oh man, Moash is just like that dude. That I see why a lot of people hate Moash. Now, I just felt like Kaladin's parts were just kind of boring. Like, all he does is train. And the other thing he does is, like I said before, he just hangs out with Parchman to learn their sides. And at first, I was like really for it. I was like, ooh, this is sick. But then it's just progressively does nothing after that. I'm like, oh god, Kaladin, what's going on? I also thought the ending with Kaladin fighting Anaram was not good. Like, for one, Rock killed him, and Kaladin didn't get the final kill. Like, it was just a disappointing. At first, I was like, ooh, this is gonna be sick, because Kaladin's gonna have his moment of revenge, which is what he wanted, and it just led to nowhere, because Rock killed Anaram, and I'm like, oh. And I felt like Anaram was just like killed a book too early. I think it was a fine villain, but it just was too early. I wish it was like another, like in Rhythm of War, that's when it happens. Granted, I don't know what happens in Rhythm of War. Maybe when I get back to this video in the future, I'll be like, oh, I was just kind of an idiot. But that's just how I felt right now. I just felt like, wow, this feels kind of rushed. Like, you know, it's gonna happen, but like, it just felt like it just boom, already. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. But yeah, it was just kind of a disappointing ending for Kaladin. I'm like, really? This is what we get for Kaladin? So a few other things I want to talk about that I really liked. I liked how we figured out originally the humans are like the original Voidbringers. That was actually a really cool thing. Spren are like what's controlling most of the like the Voidbringers. I can't remember if that happened in World of Radiance, but I know it happened in this one because that's clearly I read it. But yeah, so that was actually really interesting too. I was like, Another thing is I like Zeth's parts. I think Zeth's redemption is actually pretty good, and I think he actually is just going to be a pretty cool character. Now, if I remember, I think in the fourth book, those are Zeth's POVs. I mean, his flashbacks, or it's book 5. It might be book 5. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it was confirmed. I think it's book 5. I don't remember who's book 4, but we'll figure out eventually. But I think Zeth's a pretty cool character, and I can't wait to see more of him. Another thing, I totally forgot this character at all. Like, when she came into, like, the ending, I was like, who the hell are you? It's Lift? I think that's her name. She is the definition of, like, that YA girl boss that, like, I hate for YA novels. That she just talks to everyone, that she's smarter than everyone, and she's making these dumb jokes while they're in the middle of battle. I'm like, this is so cringe. This takes me out of the book because it's like serious moments and she's just making stupid jokes. All she wants to do is eat pancakes. And I'm like, Brandon, why is this girl in here? She is so useless. You can hate on me all you want, but I feel like a lot of people like her and I don't know why. She's not a good character, and I immediately when I read her, I'm like, I don't remember you, but I don't like you at all because it's just like the seriousness of this is just taking me out of it completely. So I just was not in for it. All in all, I give the book like a 3.5 out of 5. I think the book was fine. It wasn't like the greatest book out of all of them. I still think, personally, I think World of Radiance is the best book. And then it goes Way of Kings and then Oathbringer. So that's how I feel right now. I think Oathbringer is still a good book. I just sit there, I'm like, is it really worth the hype though? Like, I don't know, is the Stormlight, like, Stormlight Archive is, in general, is just the epic fantasy that a lot of people like, which is perfectly fine. But to me, I'm like, I don't know, there's just a lot of things. I'm like, a lot of these things could be cut out of this book in general because I just felt like it was just taking away so many things that did not go anywhere. That's just how I felt about a lot of it. And I felt like there's other parts where it could have been like dragged on to Rhythm of War. Yet again, I don't know what's going to happen in Rhythm of War. I won't be reading that until August. So I guess we'll see what happens. But all in all, I did enjoy it. I think it's definitely the weakest of the 3 that I've read so far, which is perfectly fine. I was kind of disappointed with Dalinar's flashbacks, which that's what kind of took me away from it all. Shallan was just doing Shallan things. Kaladin really took me down because he just didn't do anything. I felt like you could almost take out Kaladin's parts besides Alucard dying, but other than that, I was just like, this is it? Yeah, I just was slightly disappointed in some aspects of this book. Doesn't mean the book is bad or anything, but that's just how I felt about it. If you guys made it to the end of the video, I do appreciate it. Make sure you guys check out all my socials down below. Which Stormlight book did you guys enjoy the most? Was it Oathbringer? Who was your favorite character in the Stormlight Archive? I would like to know down below. Mine is still Dalinar, but the flashback one was kind of made a little weaker, I think. So, but I did enjoy Dalinar a lot. I actually think my favorite character that was like a side character is Rock. Rock's just a cool dude. Anyways, though, I do appreciate it. Make sure you guys stay safe, stay hungry, and tell someone you love them. I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.